Hi everybody, it's Miss H. The book we're going to be reading today is called Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle. Have you heard the name Eric Carle before? He's a really famous author and illustrator. He wrote and illustrated The Very Hungry Caterpillar and The Very Grouchy Ladybug, and he was the illustrator for Brown Bear, What Do You See by Bill Martin Jr. So you probably have read a book that he wrote or illustrated before. But if you haven't read this one, it's about a seahorse who lives in the ocean. And it's all about how the seahorse is going to have new baby seahorses. And along the way, he meets all kinds of different fish. Now, before I start, I want to show you something pretty special about this book. This book has illustrations that are a little bit different than regular. So, someone's hiding in here. But when I turn the page, now I can see who's hiding. So it's a little hard to see on the iPad, but when someone is hiding in the book and I turn the page, that's what it's going to look like. Okay? So let's read Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist, this way and that. It's time for me to lay my eggs, she said. Can I help? Asked Mr. Seahorse. Oh yes, thank you, said Mrs. Seahorse. And she laid her eggs into a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. I'll take good care of our eggs, said Mr. Seahorse. I promise. So with fish, a lot of times the daddies take care of the eggs where the babies are going to come from. So Mr. Seahorse is going to carry the eggs in the pouch on his belly. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. Do you see them? There they are. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. How are you, Mr. Stickleback? Asked Mr. Seahorse. Delighted, replied Mr. Stickleback. I just built a nest and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch. Keep up the good work, said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. You see the nest where he's taking care of the eggs? As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Do you see the lionfish? Let's turn the page. There it is. It was hidden so well in that coral reef because they're kind of the same color, right? But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. How are you, Mr. Tilapia? Asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know, said Mr. Seahorse. Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you are taking good care of them until they hatch. Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. You must be very happy, said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Do you see where Mr. Tilapia is carrying the eggs in his mouth? He's taking care of them that way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by several leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. Do you see the leaf fish? Let's turn the page. Oh, they're kind of green and blue, just like the plants, the seaweed. That's probably how they hide so well. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. How are you, Mr. Curtis? Asked Mr. Seahorse. Perfectly fine, replied Mr. Curtis. Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I have stuck them on my head. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch. You are doing a good job, said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. See the eggs on Mr. Curtis's head? He's taking care of them. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a stonefish hidden behind a rock. Ooh, do you see the stonefish? What color do you think it is?
Let's turn the page and see.
Oh, it's brown and a little bit blue, just like that rock it was hiding behind. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Ooh, look for the eggs on Mr. Pipe's belly. There they are. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. "Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You are doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Ooh, look at all the little baby fish that hatched out of the eggs. Oh, what do you see now?
The time had come
For the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted, this way and that. At last, the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. "Oh no," said Mr. Seahorse. "I do love you, but now you are ready to be on your own."
the end.
Wow, look at all those little baby seahorses. They kind of look just like Mr. Seahorse. So he took care of them in the pouch in his belly until they were ready to be hatched. And now they can go swim away. So I hope you liked reading Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle. What you're going to do now is the activity that I picked has to do with real life seahorses. Not this pretend seahorse, but real life seahorses. So what I did was I put a picture of a seahorse and I put words that talk about the different parts of a seahorse's body. Now we know the different parts of our body, right? Our head, our arms, our belly, our legs, but there are some parts that seahorses have that are different. So you're gonna drag the words and put them in the right spot for the seahorse's belly. And if you need a little bit of help, you can click on the picture that's on the top next to the arrow and you can read or listen to in Pebble Go about seahorses. So you can read the words or press the yellow button to listen about seahorses. And then you can go back and do the activity. I hope you had fun. I'll see you soon. Bye.